Yesterday, I fossicked through the chook shit pile of parts and found parts that needed to go back on the bike, and I cleaned them up and painted them and made a list of some of the things that still need to be done. I started on the exhaust shields. I took the back wheel off to give good access to the exhaust. I've released the exhaust and popped it out of its mount at the back there. This joint is solid on this exhaust at the moment, so releasing the exhaust at that end also required releasing it from the bracket here to get it floating in there. And I've done that to expose these three mounting points to mount this shield, which I've painted black. It's normally chromed. It was all rusted on the inside. It still had a bit of chrome on the outside, but internally it was completely rusty. And so I wire brushed it up and painted it black. And I've mounted it to these mounting points, three mounting points at the back there. This one here was completely covered by the exhaust, and a lot of people leave that bolt out because you can't get to it. It is actually into the cylinder, and if you're wanting to take the cylinder head off, getting to that bolt's a pain in the arse. As it turns out, it's something I've noticed is a difference between the 88-89 engine that I had as a spare engine. I've got it over there in the corner. That the 88-89 engine did not have the bosses here for those two screws at all. When I talk about a boss, a thing like this in behind there that that screw can go into, there is nothing there in that space at all, there or there. This is the 94 casting for the engine with 88-89 guts in it, but this is the casting of the 94. It did have those points, and this shield came off the 94 bike. This point at the front here on the cylinder was not, this is the 88-89 cylinder. That point there, the boss was there, but it wasn't tapped, wasn't drilled and tapped to take a screw. I don't have the cylinder off the 94 bike to even compare it with, because the 94 bike cylinder, I believe, was destroyed in the blow up of the engine, and I didn't get it and never saw it. But I do know from this bike, when I went to mount this cover, that the boss was there for that screw, but the screw hole was not drilled and tapped to take a screw there. And I could have just decided, oh, well, it doesn't really matter, it's a screw that can get in the bloody way when you're taking the bike apart in future. And I've seen people do videos to say you just leave that one out because it's in behind the pipe. But I decided, no, I'll center punch the center of the boss that was on the cylinder wall there and drilled it in location. I drilled it out 5mm drill and then tapped it M6 so that I could put that screw there in place. So the three screws in this shield are now in the correct locations. I have the piece here that goes on there. Again, it would not have been on the bike when I dismantled it, but it goes on there. It's got a fixing in the top there, down into this screw hole here, or tapped nutsert. There's nutserts, three nutserts along the top there. It uses one of those, and it also uses a bracket that comes off here and a screw in the end. You can see the screw hole there. I've got the bracket here somewhere as well that screws on here and picks up that screw hole in the end. These welded on nuts on the back of this thing here all had not sheared off bolts but angle ground off bolts in all 3 locations. I have cleared them by heating and using vice grips on the remains of the bolts to get those 3 bolt holes cleared. What I don't have, and you may say, well, why the hell have I bothered, is I don't have the cover that goes on the front of this. And so why bother with an exhaust shield at all in this situation? Well, in my thinking, the heat from this exhaust can transfer back onto the rubber and over the back of the bike there, and so or onto the airbox. And so having this piece of shielding, even though I haven't got this gear linkage here goes on here, and yes, it's possibly exposed to heat from the exhaust as well. It actually has a bit of metal between it there, but yes, look, I've got that. If I ever come across the other piece, I'll be able to just screw it on there. These holes are free, ready to accept it. I've got the piece that goes on the rear there and the bracket that goes on the rear there, and I've got a piece of exhaust shielding that goes in around the bottom of the exhaust. That exhaust is not in position at the moment, but I've got that piece as well, which I've cleaned up and will fit up. You can see where I'm working at the moment. I've removed the piece of frame that supports the front motor mount and the gear shift cable. Just to get in there, I needed to drill and tap this hole, which I did in this position, but when the pipe's in position, that's virtually center of the in center behind the pipe. So I had to take the pipe off, move it out of the way, and to get that in there, I had to remove this. I've got a number of things out. I've got the recall starter off, make clearance for what I've just done now. Now the next stage is I'm going to mount this rear cover. I can put a screw in that hole there that I've cleared, and I can mount the bracket that goes inside this to this when I put the exhaust back on. A lot of work just around getting this piece of shield back in place. A piece of shield that when it was all rusted out inside looked like a total piece of rubbish, but when it's back in place, painted up, the 3 correct fixings done for it. I've even found these bolts on the spare motor in order to mount them with the correct looking bolts. I use bolts that are equivalent to the ones that come out of the recall starter there. They're little short 8mm heads. So I've got the correct bolts in there. I've got a new tapped and hole and a fixing there. It's all looking pretty damn good. I've just identified another difference with this rear bracket. I believe this rear bracket is off the 89 bike because this cover does not fit in behind it. And so I've gone back to the Chook shit to find the other bracket that was in the Chook shit, and it has a couple of noticeable differences. This hole here in it lines up with that hole there, that hole there, and there's that offset in the end of that run and the offset in the end of that piece is different to there's a much bigger offset in that piece than there is on here. So this whole bracket steps this way to make room for that, a cover, and the actual lever itself on here has the nut facing forward, whereas it's facing backwards there. So the offset, that lever is switched around on this one. Now what I think I can do is just take this bracket off this cable, which probably is the 94 cable, but I'm not that keen to pull the whole thing out and clean the whole cable. I'm just going to clean that bracket. And I'm even going to just switch, I think the lever's the same, it's just the offset's set the other way to make room for that piece of shielding. There's differences arising now that I wasn't aware of when I was comparing 89 motors to 94 motors, and these things, I know the exhaust itself is different, but this cover didn't exist on the other exhaust, but they've made a modification to that bracket to fit the exhaust through this way, and that's all good. I can work with that. I think I can just clean up this other bracket and fit it and see how I go from there. There's the difference in those brackets. The one on the left has a straight right hand arm. The one on the right has quite an offset to the right hand arm and a bigger offset than the left hand one in the left hand arm. They bolt onto the same place. This one would have been the 94 bike. The Chook shit cleaned off it pretty well, and I believe it will just go onto the same cable, and the lever arm there can just be taken off and switched 180 degrees so that the offset in it comes out the other way, and we will have created the clearance for that top cover. There's also a difference in these lever arms. Casting is possibly the same, but the pin goes through in the opposite direction. With the pins aligned in the same direction, the slot in the bottom's the other way around. This one goes on the bike like that with the screw pointing forward, and in those situations this one's got an offset coming forward and this one's got an offset going backwards. And the combined effect of that is that the lever is further out from the exhaust here. That also needs to be changed. I'm hoping I don't think there's any difference in the cable. I was just expecting to be able to flip this one around, but it's not the same as this one. There's more offset in this one, and if you flip this one around, the pin goes to the wrong side and takes away the advantage, most of the advantage of the offset in it. So there's differences in these two parts. This is the 94, this is the one off the 88, 89 that I had on here, and it's wrong. The bracket was wrong, that lever's wrong. I'll go and clean this one up and put it on the way it was supposed to come off. Well, that's the bracket with the bigger offset on it, fitted, and I believe that must go over the front of it and pick up this hole and this hole. It doesn't go in behind there. It must come over the top of that. But this lever has got the screw now pointing forward, the pin sticking out this side with the circlip on it is the same as before, the circlip to this side, but if I'd just flipped the other one around, the pin would have been on the back side and the circlip at the back. So this actual piece of casting for this lever is the same, but the pin's in from the reverse direction, and that's what gives it the extra offset to make up for this higher offset bracket. Anyway, I've resolved that problem. So there's the rear cover on, and it bolted to this bracket. I think that bolt there would normally go into the cover that goes over this part of the pipe, and there'd be a captive nut in that the bit of tin that would be there. I've put a nut in behind there just to bolt that cover to this bracket, and now there's plenty of clearance down the side there for, that's the high and low range selector there, going through its motion nicely. Now I've also put the recoil starter back on and the piece of frame member that holds the gear shift cable. In behind that, before that went on, I had to fit that exhaust shield on the front. Now it comes right up to there, and I was going through the Chook shit parts and found another short piece of chrome, and I worked out it fits just there. It's screwed to the first captive nut, one of those 3 screws across the top. Now I'm still missing a piece that runs from here through to here on this side, but looking at that, it's not that important that it's there. This cable is reasonably well shielded from the pipe because there's metal bracket here, and there's nothing along across there. Possibly the plastic that comes down here might get a bit of heat radiated off the exhaust there, but I'm actually thinking I might go hunting on the 96 bike and take the piece off from there if I can, and see whether I can fabricate a copy of it, because I don't think I've got that piece. It'd be nice to have it, seeing that I've gone to all the trouble I have with this. This piece I'll take off again, and you can see the condition that's in. It's that's the outside. The inside's just pure rust, and it's only a short piece this long. That was the condition of all of that, and just looked like rubbish. But I thought I'd screw it in place just to hold the place. I put 2 new screws into this front shield. That front shield's in good condition. It has a bolt down over the other side there on the footrest screw. I've still got to put the brackets in here that come up and across to here. They come across and down and across to there, that hold the pneumatic fan. But one of the first things I'm going to do today, the new petcock has come in, I'm going to change the petcock over. But I've got to put the wheel on, and then this exhaust shield job has complete, and it's taken a whole day to do it. So therefore, another whole video. It's just more chook shit parts back on the bike, so get out to your shed and have some fun.